Denise Langeweg. She and her husband Mike, about 6 weeks ago now, right? 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was the end of May, beginning of June.
Yeah, so 6 weeks ago, give or take. She and Mike went over with Ryan and Becky Sisko to the Barnabas Project Uganda, this organization that is doing a lot of what Brian talked about this morning on the other side of the globe. This group that our church actually had a very important role in helping launch, and we continue to have a great working relationship with Edwin and the Barnabas Project Uganda. And because Denise and Mike call our church home, I wanted you to hear from her what it was like, what they did, and then how it impacted them as a way for all of us to stay connected to Edwin and the BPU. So why don't you first, Denise, walk us through what you saw, what you did. There's Mike in a market buying a very large watermelon, apparently. Here's the Barnabas Project Uganda is located in Busoke, which is not really a village, it's an area about an hour outside of the capital city of Uganda, Kampala. And Denise will talk to you about some of what's there and then some of what they're working on or putting together now.
So just to explain a little bit about the mission of the mission trip. When we started out, we didn't have one. It was Ryan and Becky and Mike and myself, the four of us. We were going to go stay with Edwin. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but we were staying with his in-laws, and we didn't have a timeline. We didn't have an agenda. We had, this is kind of maybe what you're going to do, sort of, if we get to it. So it was very open-ended, and it was because our group was so small. We were going to see what the need was. So we didn't want to impose a schedule on the group that we were with. We wanted to go there. We wanted to ask them, what do you need help with? What can you use us for? And go from there. And about a week before our trip, Edwin, I believe many of you have met him, his sister passed away. We weren't sure how this was going to affect our trip, but they wanted to continue anyways. So our first day in the village, actually wasn't in the village of Busoke, we traveled probably 4 hours over very, very, very terrible roads. Think Michigan in the spring times 100 in a very small vehicle with 7 people and a small child. We traveled 4 hours to Edwin's in-laws to pay respects to his mother and his family. And I was very, very surprised. We got there, and again, we didn't really know what we were going to be doing, but they had prepared a tea for us. And during the course of that, maybe 2 to 3 hours that we spent there, the vast majority of Edwin's family showed up to the point where at one point there was maybe 30 people there. And we did a prayer around the gravesite because they had buried her on site. And it was very eye-opening to see how much family involvement there really was there, and how much social involvement, because everybody had come out, everybody was paying their respects, everybody was supporting his mom, which was really, really nice. So after that, we made the very, very bumpy ride back, and the following day we went to the village. And this is the school that they currently have, because when Barnabas Project started a couple of years ago, they asked the villagers what they wanted. The first thing they needed was a well. Second thing they needed was a school, which they built both of. Now, if you see the building, this was sort of put up quickly. It was meant to be functional, and because the climate of Uganda is so, it's very, very stable. It's always about 80 to 85 degrees. It's usually sunny. They have a brief rainy season. This worked for them. It was divided up into several classrooms. It didn't have to have insulation or heat. So this structure worked for them. It's been up for a couple of years, but it is now falling apart. So what they really needed is a new school, a lot more solid structure. They are building right now the teachers' quarters.
In fact, there you go.
That is the teachers' quarters. And the reason they're building a teacher's quarters on site is because Busoke is so removed that there's not a lot of educated people there, and there was no teaching staff available to pull from the villagers. They had to bring people in, and right now they're commuting from great distances. So when this is finished in the next year, it will allow full-time teachers to stay on staff on site so that the children will have access to them all the time. If you want to go to the next slide. What we actually did was not work on that building. We worked on the bathroom. And let me tell you about Ugandan bathrooms. If this looks like a very rudimentary structure, there doesn't look like there's going to be doors there because there's not doors. And you can't really see on the inside, but there's not toilets either. A Ugandan African toilet, if you do not have indoor plumbing, which some people do, Edwin is considered very wealthy, so where we stayed, we were in the lap of luxury, and we did have indoor plumbing. We didn't have hot water, but cold showers feel really good after a really long day, so we got used to it. This consists of 3.5 walls and a hole in the ground and a tank, and that's it. And that's what everybody is used to down there who doesn't live in a larger city. And because we were there for a good portion of every day, I got really used to using those facilities. And it wasn't pleasant. But my biggest takeaway was that if I ever am lost in the woods, I can now pee anywhere in the woods, because it'll be pretty much just like that. Valuable skills to have. So if you see, there's two gentlemen. Well, Edwin is in the front, but there's two gentlemen in the back. They're actually construction workers hired by Edwin. So we didn't want to be entrusted with actually building a structure that had to last for several years. So they had construction workers who knew what they were doing to actually get the brick laid, pour the mortar. We did a lot of what I would consider just labor to help them out so that they could focus on the building, carried water, moved bricks, dug ditches. I believe that's what Edwin and Mike are doing right now, is digging a ditch. So we were the unskilled labor. And so the people who actually knew what they were doing could focus on building, and I believe it saved them a lot of time. So that was the majority of the actual mission that we performed on the trip.
Okay. Why don't you talk about how, encourage everyone here about the work that Edwin is doing and the impact you see it on the community. Because our church every month financially supports this endeavor. And several times a year, usually we write checks for even more. So I think talk about how you saw the impact on the community of Busoke, but then I want you to turn it and talk about how you and Mike were affected, how going over there impacted you guys.
So the Barnabas Project Uganda is not set up to donate to people. It is not set up to give them things. It is very much a community building project. So the school, the well is considered pretty much a gift because it was such a necessary thing, but the school is something that the community is heavily invested in. They needed it. They have really embraced it. They're helping out. They helped build a lot of the, not the structure, but the teachers' quarters. And the goal is to develop sustainability because there is such poverty there. They don't need handouts and they don't need us to give them food. They need jobs and they need to be able to develop their own communities. Uganda has a very strong social structure. It's incredible how many people and how they're all over the place. They are always talking to each other. They know everybody. Edwin, everywhere we went, got stopped because he knows everybody. So they're very engaged as a whole, much more so than I would say that the United States is. When we were driving through, even at 11 o'clock at night, random streets, it is just packed with people because that's their culture. They're so much more engaged. So in building a community development project, the goal is really you already have that social structure there. It's to capitalize on that, to help them sustain themselves, help them create their own jobs. So that is a big portion of what Barnabas Project is doing. They're not giving handouts. They are working on building the community up.
So how did it impact you and Mike?
So beyond learning how to squat in the woods, some of the other lessons I learned were the huge contrast, again, in the social structure versus what we see in America. They're so much more engaged with each other. They're so much more supportive, and it's just naturally occurring. There's not this hesitation of, well, should I really go over and spend a couple hours with my in-laws because I don't really want to. People just show up, and it's great. It's great to see that. It's great to see how much love that they have for each other. And at no point did we ever feel unsafe, because even with strangers, they would come up, they would talk to you, say hello. Becky Cisco runs a lot. I don't know why, but she does. So, some things I can't fathom the logic. But anyways, she would go for runs in the morning at 6, 7 a.m. by herself through the streets, and it was not a big deal. There was no worries. As she and I would walk around sometimes, a lot of times with the guys, sometimes without, though, I never felt intimidated. And if you're a woman in a foreign country, in some places that can be an issue. And you have to be very, very wary of men, just because they will either harass you or they will try to take you home with them. And we never, ever experienced any of that. They were always very polite and very friendly. So it was really a good example of, even if you are not from Uganda, they extend that welcome to you. And even when we went to visit Edwin's family, they made us feel like their family. And when we stayed with Edwin's in-laws, who are Doreen's parents, we actually stayed at Doreen's parents' house. And their parents and their sisters, they spent a lot of time with us. They played games with us in the evening. And it was just really a great experience. It felt like you were going to visit your own family. So that was a big takeaway that I got. And the other lesson I think that I had learned was that there is a great amount of faith in God, so much more so because people in Uganda have so little, that they have a lot more trust in God and the concept that He will provide for them and that He will bless them and protect them. And even if it's not realized in their lives, they don't lose that. They don't seem to get discouraged. They don't lose their faith. They don't have, and maybe they do and I didn't see it. But it seems to me, even in the village of Bosoke, where people are living in literally mud huts, we had talked a lot about, they would talk about God to us. They would pray with us, and it was very evident that their faith was real and it wasn't manufactured to show to other people. So that was a good takeaway, and especially the part about really trusting in God, because I think in America we get really caught up in the fact that we need to make our own decisions, and we want to make our own decisions. And if you're like me, who color codes my son's Legos, I like to be in control of everything. By the way, I'm not the only person that has done that. I've seen pictures on Facebook of RiverTreeers who have done that. It is a thing. You can find them so much easier if they're color-coded. It makes much more sense. But a lot of times, beyond Legos, people who especially hold a lot of responsibility, people who are parents who have full-time jobs, not only do you have responsibility for making decisions for yourself, you have responsibility for making decisions for others. And it's hard enough to let go and let God make decisions for you, much less trust Him to make decisions for the people that you have responsibilities for. I have 4 kids, most of you know. I have a very high-pressure job where I'm expected that is what I was hired for, is to lead teams, to make decisions, and to make the right decision all of the time. And you can't screw up, and you can't screw up when you're parenting, even though we do every day. So trusting that God is going to, through you, make the right decision is very, very difficult. And probably one of the biggest areas that I think out of this trip I would need to incorporate into my life is letting go of that control, which is very, very difficult. But I did let my son disorganize his Legos, and I haven't touched them since. So I am making some good progress.
Well done. Would you thank Denise for talking to us about her trip? and how it impacted her. You can put that right back there.